Okay. Hello out there in video land. We're continuing our reading and discussion of Wandering Rocks. And the way we are proceeding is we're reading each episode of Wandering Rocks and then stopping to discuss that episode before going on, which has been a very effective way, at least in seems like we all agree on this, very effective way to deal with this section of Ulysses. And with that, let me make sure that I truly am the first reader. I am. Okay, here we go. Hello, Simon. Father Cowley said, "How are things?" "Oh, hello, Bob, old man," Mr. Dedalus answered, stopping. They clasped hands loudly outside Reddy and Daughter's. Father Cowley brushed his mustache often downward with his scooping hand. "Oh, what's the best news?" Mr. Dedalus said. "Well, then, there's not much," Father Cowley said. "I'm barricaded up, Simon, with two men prowling around the house trying to effect an entrance." "Oh, jolly," Mr. Dedalus said. "Who is it?" Next reader.
"Oh," Father Cowley said, "certain Gambian man of our acquaintance. With a broken back, is it?" Mr. Dedalus asked. "The same, Simon," Father Cowley answered, "Reuben of that ilk. I'm just waiting for Ben Dollard. He's going to say a word to Long John to get him to take those two men off. All I want is a little time." He looked with vague hope up and down the quay, a big apple bulging in his neck. "I know," Mr. Dedalus said, nodding. "Poor old Bockety Ben. He's always doing a good turn for someone. Hold hard." He put on his glasses and gazed towards the metal bridge an instant. "Here he is, by God," he said, arse in pockets. Ben Dollard's loose blue cutaway and square hat above large slops crossed the quay in full gait from the metal bridge. He came towards them at an amble, scratching actively behind his coattails. As he came near, Mr. Dedalus greeted, "Hold that fellow with the bad trousers." "Hold him now," Ben Dollard said. Mr. Dedalus eyed with cold, wandering scorn various points of Ben Dollard's figure. Then, turning to Father Cowley with a nod, he muttered sneeringly, "That's a pretty garment, isn't it, for a summer's day?" "Why, God eternally curse your soul," Ben Dollard growled furiously. "I threw out more clothes in my time than you ever saw." He stood beside them, beaming on them first and on his roomy clothes, from points of which Mr. Dedalus flicked fluff, saying, "They were made for a man in his health, Ben, anyhow." "Bad luck to the Jewman that made them," Ben Dollard said. "Thanks be to God he's not paid yet." "And how is that basso profundo, Benjamin?" Father Cowley asked. Cashel, Boyle, O'Connor, Fitzmaurice, Tisdall, Farrell, murmuring, glassy-eyed, strode past the Kildare Street Club. Ben Dollard frowned, and making suddenly a chanter's mouth, gave forth a deep note. "Ah," he said. Next.
"That's the style," Mr. Dedalus said, nodding to its drone. "What about that?" Ben Dollard said. "Not so dusty, what?" He turned to both. "That'll do," Father Cowley said, nodding also. The Reverend Hugh C. Love walked from the old chapter house of St. Mary's Abbey past James and Charles Kennedy's rectifiers, attended by Geraldines tall and personable, towards the tussle beyond the ford of hurdles. Ben Dollard, with a heavy list towards the shop fronts, led them forward, his joyful fingers in the air. "Come along with me to the sub-sheriff's office," he said. "I want to show you the new beauty Rock has for a bailiff. He's a cross between Lobengulla and Lyncham Hawn. He's well worth seeing, mind you. Come along. I saw John Henry Menton casually in the bodega just now, and it will cost me a fall if I don't. Wait a while. We're on the right lay. Bob, believe you me." "For a few days, tell him," Father Cowley said anxiously. Ben Dollard halted and stared, his loud orifice open, a dangling button of his coat wagging bright-backed from its thread as he wiped away the heavy shrums that clogged his eyes to hear aright. "What few days?" he boomed. "Hasn't your landlord distrained for rent?" He has, Father Cowley said. And our friend's writ is not worth the paper it's printed on, Ben Dollard said. The landlord has the prior claim. I gave him all the particulars. 29 Windsor Avenue. Love is the name. That's right, Father Cowley said. The Reverend Mr. Love. He's a minister in the country somewhere. But are you sure of that? You can tell Barabbas from me, Ben Dollard said, that he can put that writ where Jacko put the nuts. He led Father Cowley boldly forward, linked to his bulk. Filberts, I believe they were, Mr. Dedalus said, as he dropped his glasses on his coat front, following them. It's very unusual for a priest to have debt collection problems.
Mm-hmm.
And it would seem to be evidence that the good Father Cowley is operating on his own account outside the jurisdiction of the clergy.
Right.
Which may also explain his whiskers, which are forbidden. Canon law at the time, but so just throwing that in.
Mm-hmm.
So, can somebody just untangle this for me? He owes rent. So why does Hugh Love have priority over Reuben J. Dodd? I'm just not sure what's happening here. Can somebody clarify that, please?
Hugh Love owns the house. The
Right.
priest. Yeah. And
He's the landlord.
I assume he owes money to Dodd for he's obviously he's a pawnbroker.
Yeah.
Okay, I see. And so
He owes to both.
So what is happening is Reuben Dodd, because Cowley owes him money for a matter unrelated to rent, is trying to get the rent money, but he can't get the rent money really because it's owed to the landlord, who is Hugh C. Love. Is that correct?
Almost. Dobbs is just trying to collect his money.
But I think the landlord would have a prior claim
Right.
on any money that he
I
has,
assume that-
because real estate is a different interest than personal property.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, there must be a hierarchy of who gets paid.
Yeah.
First, it's just like when someone goes bankruptcy, there are certain, the tax people get the money first, and then
Got it.
that sort of thing.
Once the landlord has distrained, and that's what, hasn't your landlord distrained for the rent, and hasn't he made a formal claim on you? And that freezes there. So, but it may be more complicated than that, you don't know. But there's certainly a payment situation going on, and the diocese is not involved in discharging the debt. That's the key.
Right, and they're using a trick. And Father Cowley's willing to use the trick to put off Dodd.
Yeah. And
that's
he probably, he hasn't got a roof over his head. He's renting privately. The diocese is not housing him, which they would house priests operating, within the bounds of the bishopric or whatever it's called. So he's a I don't know what you call him. He's doing he's traveling on his own account, as they say in what's it, Ivy Day, the McKeown, Father McKeown there is traveling on his own account.
Is he a Catholic, Father Cowley?
Oh yes, I would say so. Father would be a Catholic. Yeah.
Part of the church.
Is he a Jesuit though?
I don't know. That's stretching it. He sounds like a diocesan priest who has, gone over the wall.
Okay.
Right.
Those guys
On
in
his
our
own behalf, or has he been disbarred, I wonder?
I see. You wouldn't know. Like we had a few of those in our school. Guys went over the wall. Because we were 11 years there, and 2 or 3 of them went over the wall in the time, and they were great pals of some of the lads.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means going over the wall simply means that they're not acting as priests. They don't have a church,
Yeah.
but they still can keep their collar, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, we'd one teacher we were very fond of, and he just left the order one day, walked out. He got married, and so he had a wife.
Mm-hmm,
And he moved to the States. Most of my class were in the States as well, and in Los Angeles. And Father, what's his name? I remember his name, Garvey. He was very strong that he was still a priest, and he used to say mass every Sunday, in their houses. And like he saw to the boys that if they weren't going to mass would come to them. And he
That
would
was the
have
Catholic teaching. That was the Catholic teaching, Joe, that he was always a priest.
Correct.
And,
That's my understanding too.
and
It has a mark on your soul.
yeah, and he went around all their houses saying mass. It'll be your turn next week, and kind of as far as they were concerned, he was still Father Garvey.
mm-hmm,
I met him in the street 30 years later in Dublin, and I looked at him, and he just looked at me and said, "I'm Father Garvey."
Okay, so that brings me back to my statement that I made before we started reading today, because we have, "Hello, Simon," Father Cowley said. "How are things?" "Hello, Bob, old man."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That's good.
Simon is going, he's cutting to the quick. I'm not gonna treat you like, you're the priest above me. You're Bob.
Yeah, but here we have the man. We saw this man in action with Dilly, and here we have him hail fellow well met with his pals.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Dedalus, stand up straight. This guy's not saying that to the boys. Old man Bob,
But I think isn't there also a sense, I mean, maybe it's just me, but isn't there also a sense that the priest has come down in the world when he's socializing with someone like Simon Dedalus?
Yeah, but certainly when he's banging the piano in the Orbit Hotel at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he's not worrying about reading his office, That's what Dunby is. But
Yeah, it's not necessarily. I don't think necessarily, Dave, because I mean, the, aren't the good Christians supposed to hang out with the ne'er-do-wells to try to win them to the faith and strengthen their faith?
True, I did think about that before I made this statement, but I don't think it's sort of rubbing shoulders as pals kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, it's I would agree with both of you what you're saying. To me, that's the measure of it. Not going around like the start of the episode. It's probably a contrast with Father Conmee at the start, saying, "Oh, all those
Yeah.
those Reverend Father Conmee."
Yeah, Father Conley does not try to be one of the boys, as far as I can tell. He maintains the dignity of his office
Yeah, that matters to him
at all times.
There's something very strange about Ben Dollard. He's like, look at his dress.
Yeah.
Square hat. I've never understood why does he wear a square hat? What's a square hat anyway? I never know they were able to tell me.
Loose blue cutaway and square hat above, large slops across the key and full gate.
Slobs are
dangling button off his coat.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
right, Lois.
Well, he came towards them at an amble, scratching actively behind his coattails.
He looks to me
which could imply several things, including the idea that his pants are just too small for him, even in the crotch.
Yeah. Could be. And the slobs are a kind of wear a form of naval costume by men on warships.
Oh, loose blue cutaway and square hat with large slops.
Yeah. So is he? Then it's kind of very strange. And Ben Dollard with a heavy list. That's a nautical term.
Mhm.
Bell-bottom trousers, I think.
Yeah, as if these naval trousers are turning him into a sort of a ship that lists. I don't know.
Back to
Something to
back
do
to
with
our discussion of Stephen on the first page of Skill and Charybdis. Stephen sneered, and here we see his father turning to Father Cowley with a nod. He muttered sneeringly. So in some ways, the apple maybe hasn't fallen that far from the tree.
Mm.
Like father, like son. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
And,
Good.
and in some ways, I mean, Stephen sneers throughout that whole chapter, I think, anyway.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is the when he wants to feel superior. I mean, this is the father's way of being superior, of sneering at people. You know, because you sneer at people that you feel superior to, or you
Right.
want.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's in a sense his last gasp at some sort of dignity is to belittle.
Yeah. 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 Um,
Yeah,
Rose, we can't hear you.
Turn it off when the sirens go by. Um, I'm looking at QC Love, the Reverend Mr. Love. He's a
Mhm.
minister in the country somewhere. Is he the landlord?
mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I also have there's a word here that just jumped off the page at me. Bodega with a capital B.
Yeah, yeah.
What? I mean, I don't know if bodega means the same in early last century Ireland, but bodega to me is the neighborhood grocery store here.
Mm.
Certainly not the capital B.
I've got a note that says it's a pub, Lois.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
That would explain it.
Is
Thank
that,
you.
is that not Spanish? Oh, yeah, God, forgive me.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a Spanish
It is
word for
Spanish.
store.
Mhm.
Or
Store.
a cavern.
Yeah.
A cavern. Sort of an underground store. Yeah. And, you know, I was in a place in Waterford called Bodega, and it was a sort of wine bar.
Mm.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't know
Okay.
what a bodega was, and someone says that's Spanish. So
Well, in New York, it's a place. Maybe they sell liquor, but they also sell food. And my understanding is a lot of the small uh, pubs and taverns around Dublin would also sell some small selection of groceries. Am I?
That was a very old thing, Duncan. I don't think you'll find that so much anymore. It was a
No.
feature of small town public houses where you went for your groceries and had a
Mhm.
few pints while you were waiting for them to be
okay,
packaged for you.
I got it. I got it in Sloat. Bodega Company Limited, wine and spirit merchants and importers, located at 41A Dame Street.
Mm.
That's quite
Oh,
near.
okay.
So there was actually a business called the Bodega Company.
Okay. So that's the name. It's not a
Yeah.
It's,
just a
it's
description.
not a description. But in New York, a bodega is your corner store that sells groceries, no alcohol, but it'll sell groceries, newspapers, lottery tickets, that kind of thing.
No, no beer or wine.
Maybe beer, but not wine. Yeah,
Okay.
beer you can sell with a beer license, but wine you need a liquor
Okay.
license.
Okay. And they always have a cat, right?
There's always a bodega cat.
Mm.
Lovely.
So, Mr. Kennedy, we're just discussing that the first thing where we started today about the um, Father Cowley who's having trouble with debts, and they're trying to work out a scheme where he can avoid paying Dodd. So this is getting a little petty, but I mean, I assume the thing is, going back to the Navy thing, that Ben Dollard not only is wearing some pretty odd clothing, but the clothing is actually winter clothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like woolen.
And that's the phrase, that's a pretty garment, isn't it, for a summer's day?
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense of that. Hmm.
Okay.
There's a funny little thing toward the beginning where he says, I'm barricaded up, Simon, with two men prowling around the house trying to effect an entrance. Well, that's a lot like we see later where Stephen and Bloom are prowling around the house trying to get in.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, it also adds to the thing that Father Cowley is not answering the door, and is probably
Yeah.
he's doing what he can not to meet these men.
Yeah. Yeah, he actually says, I'm barricaded up. I never thought that meant that he was actually barricaded, but it does in that sense. He's got the cabinet pushed against the door. He's barricaded up.
Yeah, or they knock on the door and he's pretending that he's not there.
Yeah, and he won't let them force an entry. These are debt collectors, probably. Yeah.
Okay, are we ready to move to the next section?
Hey.
Okay.
Just maybe point out the two intrusions, or I think we had a better word for it last time. I've forgotten them. Inclusions? Cuts?
Inserts.
Inserts. Thank you, Lois. That's it. Inserts. Yes, there they are. So there's Cashel Boyle, O'Connor, Fitzmore, Tisdale, Farrell. Was he a real character?
Yes.
He was. Thank you, Bill. And then the other one was Hugh C. Love. So we see Hugh C. Love in the chapter where Ned Lambert's showing him around what has become a granary. Then he's part of the, what was it again, Lois? Insertion?
Inserts. I would say inserts.
Insert.
Insert here, and then coincidentally he does service as the landlord as well.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, I think you would make a wonderful detective because in all of those detective shows, you see they have this whiteboard with sticky notes and yellow strings and red tie tacks. And you're putting all those things up there and taking that string from one tack to another.
Thank you.
And photos of all the suspects and the victims.
Right. Well, I did have a photo of Queen Victoria here.
And nobody splashed it.
Who was the last reader on this section?
I think I'm next.
Okay.
If I'm
Why don't you proceed on, Sylvia?
the youngster will be all right, Martin Cunningham said as they passed out of the castle yard gate. The policeman touched his forehead. God bless you, Martin Cunningham said cheerily. He signed to the waiting Jarvey, who had chucked at the reins and set on towards Lord Edward Street. Bronze by gold, Miss Kennedy's head by Miss Douce's head appeared above the cross-blind of the Ormond Hotel. Yes, Mr. Cunningham said, fingering his beard. I wrote to Father Conmee and laid out the whole case before him. You could try our friend, Mr. Parr suggested backward. Boyd, Martin Cunningham said shortly. Touch me not. John Wise Nolan, lagging behind, reading the list, came after them quickly down Cork Hill. On the steps of City Hall, Councillor Nanetti, descending, hailed Alderman Cowley and Councillor Abraham Lyon, ascending. The castle car wheeled empty into Upper Exchange Street. Look here, Martin, John Wise Nolan said, overtaking them at the mail office. I see Bloom put his name down for 5 shillings. Quite right, Martin Cunningham said, taking the list. And put down the 5 shillings too. Without a second word either, Mr. Power said. Strange but true, Martin Cunningham added. Next.
John Wise Nolan opened wide eyes. I'll say there is much kindness in the Jew, he quoted elegantly. They went down Parliament Street. There's Jimmy Henry, Mr. Power said, just heading for Cavendis. Right-o, Martin Cunningham said, here goes. Outside La Maison Claire, blazes boiling, waylaid Jack Mooney's brother-in-law, humpy, tight, making for the Liberties. John Wise Nolan fell back with Mr. Power, while Martin Cunningham took the elbow of a dapper little man in a shower of hail suit who walked uncertainly with hasty steps past Mickey Anderson's watches. The assistant town clerk's corns are giving him some trouble, John Wise Nolan told Mr. Power. They followed round the corner towards James Kavanagh's wine rooms. The empty castle car fronted them at rest in Essex Street. Martin Cunningham, speaking always, showed off on the list at which Jimmy Henry did not glance. And Long John Fanning is here too, John Wise Nolan said, as large as life. The tall form of Long John Fanning filled the doorway where he stood. Good day, Mr. Sub-Sheriff, Martin Cunningham said, as all halted and greeted. Long John Fanning made no way for them. He removed his large Henry Clay decisively, and his large, fierce eyes scowled intelligently over all their faces. Are the conscript fathers pursuing their peaceful deliberations, he said, with rich, acrid utterance to the assistant town clerk.
Hell open to Christians they were having, Jimmy Henry said pettishly, about their damned Irish language. Where was the marshal, he wanted to know, to keep order in the council chamber? And old Barlow, the mace bearer, laid up with asthma, no mace on the table, nothing in order, no quorum even. And Hutchinson, the Lord Mayor in Llandudno, and no Lorcan Sherlock doing locum tenens for him. Damned Irish language, language of our forefathers. Long John Fanning blew a plume of smoke from his lips. Martin Cunningham spoke by turns, twirling the peak of his beard to the assistant town clerk and the sub-sheriff, while John Wise Nolan held his peace. What dignum was that? Long John Fanning asked. Jimmy Henry made a grimace and lifted his left foot. Oh, my corns, he said plaintively. Come upstairs, for goodness sake, till I sit down somewhere. Oh, mine. Testily, he made room for himself beside Long John Fanning's flank and passed in and up the stairs. Come on up, Martin Cunningham said to the sub-sheriff. I don't think you knew him, or perhaps you did, though. With John Wise Nolan, Mr. Power followed them in. Decent little soul he was, Mr. Power said to the stalwart back of Long John Fanning, ascending towards the Long John Fanning in the mirror. Rather low-sized, dignum of Menton's office, that was, Martin Cunningham said. Dave.
Long John Fanning could not remember him. Clatter of horse hoofs sounded from the air. What's that? Martin Cunningham said. All turned where they stood. John Wise Nolan came down again. From the cool shadow of the doorway he saw the horses pass Parliament Street, harness and glossy pasterns in the sunlight shimmering. Gaily they went past before his cool, unfriendly eyes. Not quickly. In saddles of the leaders rode outriders. What was it? Martin Cunningham asked as they went on up the staircase. The Lord Lieutenant General and General Governor of Ireland, John Wise Nolan answered from the stairfoot.
Pretty straightforward. Couple of inserts.
Yes, with the Ormond Hotel, which hasn't appeared yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And one of them is a look back at Dubliners because Jack Mooney's brother-in-law, Humpy Tight Making for the Liberty,
Oh, yeah.
is Bob Dorn
Bob.
on a bender, and we see his
Yeah.
unfortunate fate in the boarding house in Dubliners.
And that's a cut because they're La Maison Claire's in Grafton Street.
Right.
Well, that's 200 yards away.
Okay.
Not too bad.
This is all a government complex of some sort, right? With the
Yeah,
courthouse.
the castle yard, the castle is all a government complex where the seat of government where the
Mhm.
But they're outside it. They're not inside it. They've passed out of the castle yard. Martin Cunningham said as they passed out of the castle yard. So they're coming out there at the Olympia Theatre at City Hall, sort of area.
Okay.
Even British administration.
And then they're going towards Lord Edward Street, so they turn towards Thomas Street. The Jarvie, set on towards Lord Edward Street, and then Cork Hill would be following on that. John Wise Nolan like behind him, quickly down Cork.
Come around past Dublin City Hall.
And then on the City Hall, Councillor Nanetti coming down the steps of the City Hall, which you can still do today. And the castle car wheeled empty into Upper Exchange Street. That's the street at the steps. So it's all in a tight area, each other.
Okay, so is the on the steps of City Hall, Nanetti descending? Is that an insert, or are they actually passing him?
That's right where they are. Yeah,
that's right where they are.
Yeah.
So it's not an insert then.
No.
Right.
That the City Hall come down onto Lord Edward Street as well.
Okay, thanks. I'll change my book here. And
Also,
I'm kind of losing the forest for the trees character-wise. Can somebody tell me, have we seen John Wise Nolan before?
Was he at the funeral?
yeah, I'm pretty sure we've seen him before, but I can't remember where. Might have been the funeral.
I can check that one.
You know what? I should get that. I've got my handy device here. It's good for stuff like that.
I don't think we've seen him before. I don't think so. He's just a friend, isn't he, of Cunningham's?
He's not. I just did a word search on the Hades chapter. He's not there. Anyway. It's sorry, I didn't mean to gum everybody up here. It's not
fine,
significantly important to me. I just wondered.
Okay, it's okay.
Well, but in a similar vein, we have all of a sudden we had Father Cowley
Yeah.
in the previous, the first section we read today, and now we have Alderman Cowley.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Different man. And
And Counselor Nanetti is the guy from the
From
Freeman.
right, right.
yeah. And
Mhm.
John Weiss Nolan, I think, David, the way I'm thinking, don't we meet him next in Cyclops? Doesn't he come with Cunningham on the car?
Ah, okay.
I think that's where he appears again, and he might
Right.
be her again, but don't remember him earlier.
Right. And
That's-
Nanetti, we see in the Aeolus chapter thing, Bloom goes
Yeah.
by him, and he's an example of somebody who's come from somewhere else and is really integrated into Dublin society, which
Yeah.
Bloom is not being permitted to do because he's always seen as an outsider, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's
And
see.
is the youngster one of the young Dignams?
Right. They
Oh,
found
yeah.
they think they'll find
Yeah.
him a job
Mhm.
somewhere.
Yeah,
They-
it's young Dignam who they're going to put into a good school, Belvedere, probably.
All right.
I think
Which
it's
is
more.
why they needed to see Conmy, correct, Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Right.
Conmy is trying to get him into our
Oh,
team.
right. Oh, sorry. Yeah. See that now. Yeah.
So he's not a kid with a great future ahead of him.
John Weiss Nolan, yeah. Is he married to Power's sister? John Weiss Nolan?
I don't think so.
He's married because there is a previous mention of his wife in an earlier episode. Let's see. Flynn said, I met him the day before yesterday, and he coming out of that Irish dairy farm, John Weiss Nolan's wife, as in Henry Street, with a jar of cream in his hand, taking it home to his better half.
Where is that?
Where'd you get that?
Unfortunately, I'm looking this up in the complete works of James Joyce.
Oh, right.
I can't quite figure out what episode. I just know that it is before what we're reading today.
I think it's in Lestragonians. I remember it as one of those, that's the other part. There's lots of people appearing in different little scenarios. And I think it's that is in one of them. Is that not in David Byrne's pub? His name comes up in that.
So basically, Martin Cunningham is doing this thing of running around getting pledges for the Dignam family. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And for some reason, he does not want to try. Where does he say, touch me not? Boyd? Martin Cunningham said shortly, touch me not.
Yeah, Boyd's known for not contributing anything, apparently. But who Boyd is, I don't remember or know.
Okay.
My note, Bill, says William A. Boyd, General Secretary of Dublin YMCA, and that'll be out of Gifford, I'm sure. And I just did a word search on Lestragonians, and whoever placed Nolan in Lestragonians, or the mention of Nolan in Lestragonians, you're right. That was it.
Okay.
It was what you read, Duncan.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Is this a red herring? Why is Blaze Boylan going to the Liberty?
Oh, he's not.
He's not going to the Liberties.
It's Jack.
Jack Mooney is on his way to the Liberties.
It's Jack Mooney's brother-in-law, Bob Doran.
Bob Doran. Right.
And he will manage to end up the other side of the river completely. I don't think we ever meet him at the Liberties. I doubt if he makes it to the Liberties. He somehow across the other side of the river completely, which is a good indication of the dangers of drink.
Yes, you go to the Liberties to take liberties.
Oh, yeah.
So I like this thing. I think that this is a nice contrast where Martin Cunningham will not go to Boyd, and we just learned that Boyd is not a contributor, at least not to funds like that. And then very soon we have this thing about not only has Bloom pledged 5 shillings, he actually gave the 5 shillings. So which implies that there is the typical thing of people making pledges and not actually pulling the money out and putting it in the hat.
And that word "touch me not," that word "touch" in Dublinese is to get money off someone. He's a soft touch, you know.
You put the touch on someone.
Put the touch on. Yeah. Don't touch me means don't ask me to put money in. That say mention his name and say don't touch me as part of his name almost.
And would you also to tap somebody for money?
Yeah.
And then there's the biblical reference, Noli me tangere, with doubting Thomas.
And there's this section where the dead Jesus tells Mary Magdalene, "Touch me not," right?
Yeah. Because I'm not yet been to the Father. And
it's no, but I just love it how people take these things from the Bible and use them quite irreverently in sort of common talk, right?
Yeah.
And there's the Stephen and Proteus where he says, "Touch me, touch me."
That's a different kind of touch.
Yes.
But
I have a question about a phrase here. Hell open to Christians they were having, Jimmy Henry said pettishly, about their damned Irish language. What does that phrase, hell open to Christians?
Means a really rowdy, rambunctious, noisy, boisterous occasion.
Okay.
So there was, they were shouting and screaming and yelling at one another about the Irish language.
In the council chambers, so that some sort of meeting.
Right.
That's actually quite a, oh yeah, I wanted to ask right above that, what does conscript fathers mean? Middle of the page of 222. Are the conscript fathers pursuing their peaceful deliberations? He said with rich, acrid utterance to the assistant town clerk.
I'm assuming that that's a reference to the bureaucrats who are having this meeting. They are conscripted into their roles. And he's calling them fathers rather, like we call our founding fathers fathers. That's what I assumed it was. It's the government people doing their job in this meeting.
Yeah, they're really the elected representatives are described as the conscript fathers. That's a phrase from the Roman Senate.
Yes.
So in this case, they're elected representatives. So they're up there, in their own quiet little way, running the town, running the city. In fact, they haven't got the mace on the table or anything. They haven't anything set up properly.
I think the full phrase in use was hell open to Christians to caution them from entering it. So there's that aspect of it too. You know, they're discussing the Irish language, but they don't, the speaker doesn't expect that there ever will be an Irish language bill or anything of the sort. You know,
there was a tract written by a Jesuit back in the 1600s sometime.
Yeah.
And that was its name in Italian, hell open to Christians.
Okay.
So I suppose, when you think of the hellfire speech or what do you call it, a sermon in poetry, you know, that would be kind of frightening people into.
Yeah, it would be if they had an open house in hell that you could go to and see how bad it was, you'd maybe change your ways.
Yeah, spend a few hours
I got
there, you fix you up for life.
Yeah. Thanks. That take on it helps me. I understand it now. Thank you.
And then there's a line, just the next line in mine. Where was the marshal? And I've got a note here saying that it's John Howard Parnell who was playing chess in the next chapter. Is that true? Can anybody confirm that?
He was supposed to be the marshal?
Yeah, was he supposed to be? Is that correct, Bill?
Yeah,
I believe, yeah.
Yeah, he was also notorious for not attending, you know.
Okay. All right. So he actually was, in real life, he was the marshal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. But he's
But
off,
I think
he's off playing chess.
I think he got the position by being Parnell's brother,
Right.
and he obviously didn't have to do anything
Yeah.
for the post. It was more a sinecure. It was more, you know, well, you get paid every week, but you don't have to bother showing up.
Yeah, but he was supposed to maintain order in the council chamber. That's what it says. Right. He was marshal. Where was the marshal when he wanted to know to keep order in the council chamber? But he's over there playing chess.
Yeah.
Yep. Playing chess in the DBC.
Right.
Yeah.
Same lane, well, about a block away.
Yeah, a walking distance away. Now open, by the way, again, as a sort of place you go and consume stuff like cakes and drink and things, you know.
I think it's very interesting though, because they're saying, where is the marshal? And that is sandwiched between two references to Long John Fanning, who was obviously a very intimidating character.
Yeah.
Who, you know, if he had the authority, he could bring order in the court if he wanted to.
Yeah.
Except it's not his role.
No, he's not even the sheriff. He's the sub-sheriff.
Sub-sheriff, yeah.
So he just goes out sort of evicting people and all this kind of stuff and collecting debts and seizing furniture. And
right.
And they may be the sheriff's men that are prowling around the house.
Right. Very likely.
Call them off, you know.
Yeah.
He could call them off.
Yeah.
I once had an encounter with the sheriff, the city sheriff. My forte in accountancy was insolvency work. So we kind of took possession of premises and things like this in insolvency situations and receivership. And once in a restaurant in Grafton Street, which was in liquidation, we're High Court liquidation. The sheriff arrived round with all his men and lorries and seized all the furniture, tables and chairs and so on, them up in the truck. While I was sort of the receiver's man sort of there, and I didn't know. I stayed out of the place. I stayed upstairs reading books. I wasn't getting involved in the stuff downstairs. One of the waitresses came up and said, "We've no tables," after stealing the tables. And I went out to the truck and I said one word to the sheriff. I said, "Officer of the High Court." And he said, "I apologize, they'll be returned immediately."
Wow.
All the tables and chairs back in. People were left holding their lunches in plates, you know. And the
Joe
descended on them, and we didn't have many customers after that, actually. You know. Grafton Street. Can you imagine Grafton Street? You
know. If it's possible, Joe, could you turn your volume up just a smidge? I'm probably my too well-worn ears.
Question for Donna. Donna, same paragraph. I've been there, but I have a hard time pronouncing it. Clandudno?
That's in,
Llandudno, yes.
that's
Well
in
done.
Yes, can you say it one more time, Donna?
Llandudno.
And it's a CL sound, correct? The double
It's a
L?
CL, yeah, or KL,
Clandudno.
if you wish.
Oh,
It's
okay.
not pronounced with the double L.
Right. It's a very pretty town.
Yeah. We came across a similar one in our reading of Dylan Thomas's
Undermill?
Under Milkwood, yeah,
Mhm.
which was Claregub.
yeah, which is bugger all backwards though.
Correct.
So not a real town.
No.
So did we talk about what role that John Weiss Nolan is playing in this section?
Well, he does have a kind word for Bloom.
He does have a kind word for Bloom, yes.
Well, it's possible the real John Weiss Power, actually, I think was his name, was a nationalist, and he might have been arguing for the Irish language in the council that day. And, you know, it might be why he's there. I don't know.
Hmm. I would assume that the Joyce family had experience with sub-sheriffs such as Long John Fanning, when they would be asked to leave apartments and pay rents and stuff.
Yeah, though I don't know that they were, I mean, I'm not sure if they were actually formally ever evicted. I mean, the story, and I'm not sure where I read it, but John Joyce used to make a deal with their landlord. All right, we'll leave if you sign this letter of recommendation so they could get another place to live. So, you know, he would say, all right, we won't contest anything. We'll just leave. Sorry, I can't pay you, but we'll just leave. But here, sign this for me, and then we'll be gone. And so then they would get all their furniture and go and get another place to live with a recommendation from the previous landlord that was worthless. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's.
Seems like Dublin was a little small for that kind of behavior over decades.
Well, they moved to different neighborhoods, that's for certain.
Yeah, they went as far as Bray places where they wanted to be.
Great. They didn't stay in the same place or the same area very long. Ended up on the north side.
Are we ready for the next section? Okay.
Okay, right. As they trod across the thick carpet, Buck Mulligan whispered behind his Panama to Haynes, Parnell's brother, there in the corner. They chose a small table near the window opposite a long-faced man whose beard and gaze hung intently down on the chessboard. Is that he? Haynes asked. twisting round in his seat. Yes, Mulligan said, that's John Howard, his brother, our city marshal. John Howard Parnell translated a white bishop quietly, and his grey claw went up again to his forehead whereat it rested. An instant after, under its screen, his eyes looked quickly, ghost bright at his foe, and fell once more upon a working corner. I'll take melange, Haynes said to the waitress. Who melange, Buck Mulligan said, and bring us some scones and butter and some cakes as well. When she had gone, he said, laughing, we call it DBC, because they've damn bad cakes. Oh, but you missed Dedalus and Hamlet. Haynes opened his new bought book. I'm sorry, he said. Shakespeare is the happy hunting ground of all minds that have lost their balance. Next, please. To the one-legged sailor. That's you, Bill.
The one-legged sailor growled at the area of 14 Nelson Street. England expects. Buck Mulligan's primrose waistcoat shook gaily to his laughter. You should see him, he said, when his body loses his balance. Wandering Angus, I call him. I'm sure he has an idée fixe, Haynes said, pinching his chin thoughtfully with thumb and forefinger. Now I am speculating what it would be likely to be. Such persons always have. Buck Mulligan bent across the table gravely. They drove his wits astray, he said, by visions of hell. He will never capture the Attic note, the note of Swinburne, of all poets, the White Death and the Ruddy Birth. That is his tragedy. He can never be a poet. The joy of creation. Eternal punishment, Haynes said, nodding curtly. I see. I tackled him this morning on belief. There was something on his mind, I saw. It's rather interesting because Professor Pokorny in Vienna makes an interesting point out of that. Buck Mulligan's watchful eyes saw the waitress come. He helped her to unload her tray. He can find no trace of hell in ancient Irish myths, Haynes said, amid the cheerful cups. The moral idea seems lacking, the sense of destiny, of retribution. Rather strange. He should have just that fixed idea. Does he write anything for your movement? He sank 2 lumps of sugar deftly longwise through the whipped cream. Buck Mulligan slit a steaming scone in 2 and plastered butter over its smoking pith. He bit off a soft piece, hungrily. 10 years, he said, chewing and laughing. He's going to write something in 10 years. Seems a long way off, Haynes said, thoughtfully, lifting his spoon. Still, I shouldn't wonder if he did, after all. He tasted a spoonful from his creamy cone of his cup. This is real Irish cream, I take it, he said with forbearance. I don't want to be imposed on. Elijah, skiff, light crumpled throwaway, sailed eastward by banks of ships and trawlers amid an archipelago of corks, beyond New Wapping Street, past Benson's Ferry, and by the 3-masted schooner Rose Van from Bridgewater with bricks.
Interesting, Buck Mulligan's prophesying that Stephen will write something in 10 years, which was 1914, which was a big year for Joyce in publishing and
Yes,
writing.
and it's not just Mulligan prophesying. That's what Dedalus has told him he's going to do. That Stephen has said he'll write something in 10 years.
Oh, I say 10 years, he said that Stephen said?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see.
And that's part of my whole idée fixe about this book. Let's put it that way.
Why would Stephen have thought it would take him 10 years? Why, he's going off to write. Wouldn't you think that he would think, I'm going to write something soon?
Well, if my theory is correct, I think it's Joyce / Stephen telling us, giving us the hint that this book is Stephen's Dubliners. So it's after the fact. Obviously Joyce is writing this, publishing it in 22, writing it long after 14. So he knows that he's going to publish. He knows that Dubliners will be published 10 years later. So it allows him. I think it allows him to give us that clue.
Yeah, I think it's actually, I think it implies that he will have something printed in 10 years. That he is writing, but he's set such high standards for himself that he knows that even though he's writing, it's going to be a long time before he actually has something that he wants to be released to the public. That's a guess on my part.
Yeah, but 4 and 10 is 14. And that's the year of the publication, 1914, of Dubliners. So it's a reference to the publication of Dubliners.
Yeah.
In 1904, someone's saying in 10 years' time, 10 plus 4 is 14. So
Right.
This guy would print something, in 10 years. So it seems to me just a straightforward reference to Dubliners.
Well, it was also the year that the Portrait of an Artist was first serialized, was it not? So that was published also.
Yeah, that's it. And of course, some aspects of Dubliners had been published in 1945. So, the serialization. So, but, actually getting the book form happens later. Yeah, you kind of.
But when Mulligan's telling Haynes this, as far as Mulligan knows, he hasn't really written anything. He's written some poems and things, but he hasn't produced any great work. And it's really, in terms of a timeline, it's really after this date in 1904 that Joyce actually does publish some of his short stories in the Freeman's Journal and elsewhere. Begins to publish a few stories that end up in Dubliners. So according to Mulligan, he hasn't written anything yet. But he says, that Stephen said he'll write something in 10 years. And I can see that in a number of ways. I mean, if you really take seriously or take the characters seriously as being real, Stephen and Mulligan, and not just being Joyce and Gogarty. Even if they are Joyce and Gogarty, you can see Joyce dissembling if Gogarty presses him too much, or you can see Stephen dissembling a little bit if Mulligan were to press him so much about his writing, and Dedalus / Joyce just saying, yeah, I'll write something in 10 years. Not wanting to give the game away that he's actually writing something. Because if he tells Mulligan, or if he told Gogarty that he was writing something, they would want to see it. And then they would criticize it, and then they would tear it apart, and then they, So, but from what we know now, we know that it's a direct reference to the year 1914 when, in fact, he did publish Dubliners and began serializing Portrait.
And then 10 years is also the shorthand for the duration of the voyage home by Odysseus.
Right, right.
Good
The,
point.
the Trojan War is another 10 years. 10 years just meaning a very long time. So, you know, you could kind of extrapolate a bit into that. And
Mhm. What is Mulligan hang? What's Mulligan hanging out with Haynes? Why?
Well,
Haynes-
Haynes is his guest. Apparently they were at school together.
they're at Oxford, weren't they? Isn't
At
it?
Oxford, they were at Oxford together.
Okay, okay.
And then Haynes is visiting Ireland because he's interested in the Irish language and blah, blah,
Okay.
Irish culture. And so Goggerty or Mulligan is his host for the week or however long he's in,
Okay. Okay.
give him a place to stay. And he's showing them around. He's showing him around. He's introducing him to people.
Hmm.
He went off to buy Love Songs of Connacht.
Hmm.
That's the book that he's holding in the DBC. That's the book he has
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
by Douglas Hyde. And, couple of gentry.
Yeah. The other question that crossed my mind, does anybody else find what they're eating to be a bit unusual?
Hmm.
Not, and probably not for a couple of guys from Oxford. And it was obviously on the menu.
Hmm.
Why does it seem unusual to you?
Because it's sweet and creamy and fruity.
Mhm.
It
That
just
would be still a custom, particularly in fancy restaurants, to have a steaming scone and open it up and slap butter on it. And let
yeah,
the butter
that part of
melt.
it, that yeah,
Yeah.
scones with butter, I mean, make perfect sense to me. And I'm probably just,
But if you ask for a melange, that means you want a variety. You want a sampling.
Mm.
So it's whatever sweets are on offer that day, I suppose. You'd get a melange, you'd get a medley or a collection of them. So you could try them
okay.
all. It's not like you had to just order one thing.
Is it a mixture of fruit and thick cream? That's what I've written a note here for that.
It's not a blanc, it's not a blancmange, it's a melange. It's just I think it's just a medley.
Okay.
And
Bring
I think they're just drinking tea with cream along
Mm.
with it. That's my reading of it. That the melange does not refer to a beverage or a fruity drink or anything. They're just drinking tea with heavy cream and an assortment of baked goods.
And it could
okay.
be a fruit
Okay,
scone.
well, yeah, all right. That makes sense to me. I think I was letting Gifford mislead me a little bit here.
Yeah, so I think sure my note was from Gifford too. Does Sloat have anything to say about it, Joe?
I haven't gone into it there.
Okay.
I'm kind of lost track.
Yeah. The other thing, maybe this is to the Irish people. Is your cream objectionable over there? Because Haynes doesn't seem to like it very well. This is real Irish cream, I take it, he said with forbearance. I don't want to be imposed on.
I think
Nowadays, your cardiologist would recommend against it because it's bad for your heart.
Yeah.
I think he's criticizing the quality of the cream in the DBC. It's like
All right, fair enough.
they've ordered cream for their tea, and it's probably a little watery for.
Okay.
So he's being a little he's being very critical.
Okay.
Right.
Thinking maybe they're cheating him a bit too. I don't want to be imposed on.
Yeah.
All right.
Sloat on melange, mixture, French, a cafe melange has coffee, milk, water, whipped cream, and castor sugar. This would have been a standard item on the menu at the DBC.
So this is a cafe melange then.
Yeah, cafe melange.
Could be.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
All those items bad for your heart.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. But they wouldn't have been conscious of that those days.
No, not back then.
Okay, so Mulligan, yeah, and here we have Mulligan. We call it DBC because they have damn bad cakes.
Right, and two inserts here. The one-legged sailor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is that 14 Nelson Street? Now that's interesting because, of course, Admiral Nelson. Is it near Irish people? Is it near where the Nelson Monument was? Nelson Street?
No.
No.
Don't know
Okay.
that.
All right.
So we have,
Okay, and the other one is the throwaway, the paper.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Cowley's Elijah
end.
is paper is making its way slowly to the sea.
Yeah, the interesting one that Sylvia homed in on that last week or the week before. But I was reading in a academic paper, which I have forgotten the source, that Joyce commented on this episode and said that the skiff, not the paper, which alternates between the north and south side of the Liffey as it goes through the episode, represents the Jason episode. Jason being the mythical.
the golden
Oh, yeah.
space
Jason
boy.
and the Argonauts. Yeah.
Who did travel between the two
Wandering
ones,
Rocks.
which Ulysses didn't, and
Right.
that little piece of paper represents Jason, traveling between the south sides of the city. It's interesting that you had honed in on it, Sylvia, because there it was, and these were in quotes from James Joyce. It was interesting. I for the life of me, I read so much bloody stuff. I don't know where I found it. I'm trying to find it.
I know the problem.
Yeah, but if I find it, I will report back. It was
And then
interesting.
roll back to the end of carry on.
Joyce referred to this episode, by the way, as the Wandering Rocks. In that
Hey.
correspondence, yeah, as he did all the Homeric references in all his correspondence, he refers to them by those names. So there we are.
So I'm just going to throw this out there. This is a throwaway comment, but it is. But that he's throwing away this paper. It's kind of akin to Joyce throwing his writing out into the world. It's a little symbolic.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the reference to Elijah in this phrase?
Yeah. I wonder what that.
That's printed
the
on the
future.
handbill. That's what the handbill is. It's
Oh, it was
Elijah
a
is
hand, it was a
coming.
handbill
Elijah is coming.
for the oratorio. I got it.
yeah.
Mm.
Elijah
Right,
is coming.
and don't
Got
forget
it.
when
Is coming. Is coming. Is coming.
right.
Thank you.
W.J. Dowie, is it? Or
Yeah.
J.
Yes.
JC
Yeah.
JC Dowie.
J.C. Dowie is one of his leaflets that he's been handed on the bridge. And that's
Right.
a leaflet like that is a throwaway. And he throws it away.
Mhm.
So,
And at the end of Cyclops, we have Bloom,
Elijah Bloom. Yeah.
Elijah Bloom.
Sending to heaven.
Because of a throwaway, because of another throwaway.
Yes.
One you Ascot Gold Cup. Oh, it's so nicely knit together.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And also too the Rosavine, the three-masted schooner, takes us back to the end of Proteus.
Yeah. And
Oh.
Mhm.
kind of links us, Proteus, to Cyclops.
Yeah.
Cabman Shelter, where the seaman produces his papers to say he came up this morning on the Rosehaven.
Right, Murphy.
Oh.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Oh, wow. This is just like a jigsaw puzzle, isn't it?
It's,
Mhm.
it's
I mean,
I I think when Lois mentioned the chart, with all the post-it notes on it, brilliant description of the book.
Say that, Sylvia. Funny you should say that.
I really thought we're doing this way because it's pointing out things that I never would have thought of or would have
Yeah.
seen.
You just don't get it, and there's probably things we're missing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Right.
Oh, is that a jigsaw?
You should buy
It is.
Oh, somebody
I've just finished that at home, Joe.
Oh God.
do.
And I
It's a
have,
great way to read Ulysses.
I tell you, you need to know your Ulysses to do this.
Absolutely. Yes.
Someone bought me that for my birthday, and I haven't opened it yet.
Oh,
Well,
you should.
Which reminds me, if you didn't notice, so Susan Emmanuel has been reading with us most of the time.
Oh yeah.
And she's going to be in Dublin for Bloomsday, I guess the week or something like that. And she doesn't come on to Facebook, but she sent me the itinerary or the menu for different tours that can be taken. And she asked if I would mention it to you all, that if you have any tours, you can't do all the tours. It looked to me like there's a long list of 12 or 15 tours. But if anybody has an opinion about, is willing to look at the menu and say, oh, well, that tour there would probably be pretty good. If you just send it or mention it to me, I'll pass it on to her.
Okay.
And that is on the Facebook page. How many people look at the James Joyce Readers Facebook page?
I can't find it.
No, it doesn't come up on my Facebook either.
Oh, well, let me work on that.
I found it, Duncan.
Yeah.
I think you have to kind of look for it. I don't know.
Yeah, you have to put in the search.
Yeah.
And what's it called? Is it
Called
River?
James Joyce Readers.
James.
And I can
Yeah.
just put that in the search and it'll show up
Yep.
because I don't really
Yeah.
use Facebook.
No,
Yeah,
And I have an account, but I never use it.
Well, you'd be able to see yourself reading, Lewis,
Oh, dear.
Oh,
Wow.
but Mhm.
Wow. Will
and
it show me?
you can watch all of us as well.
But
Will
this
it
is
show
a,
me last week when I fell asleep during the program? I woke up, it was 4 o'clock, and you're all saying goodbye.
Okay, so if you look in the chat, I just put a link in, and if you click that link, your regular browser, whatever browser you use, will open up and take you to that. So let me try.
it's different from the YouTube.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, this is on Facebook.
gotcha. So what
So
about, so is the Monday group on Facebook or on YouTube, or is
It's on both.
on Dante?
And Dante is actually, there's the Dante, we don't have a Dante group except for the Messenger.
So
But
you're not recording it or anything?
I do record it. Yes,
Uh-huh.
I do record it, and I post that on Massey's site.
Yeah,
River Run, Riverando.
Okay, all right.
But it looks like I'm joined, but I don't know.
Can I ask, what is for your movement? Haynes asks, does Stephen write for your movement?
Mhm. Is that not the Celtic movement?
Don't know.
Even though I doubt that Buck Mulligan is part of the movement.
Well, he's invited to George Moore's
Ah, you're right.
poetry thing.
Okay.
You're
So,
right.
I mean, it might be a reference
perfect.
to that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Obviously, Mulligan's probably told Haynes that they're going to George Moore's.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Where is that?
It's kind of funny because the only reason we know about this gathering is because of the most famous Irish writer did not get invited to it. It's the
That's-
only reason we're
that's
talking
right.
about George Moore's party. And I guess the moral of the story is be careful who you don't invite.
Right, that's right.
Where is that line, Sylvia?
He can find no trace of hell in ancient Irish myth, Haynes said, amid the cheerful cups.
Yeah, 224.
It's just after the waitress delivered all the food and Buckmulligan gave her a hand.
But is that related to wandering this? No.
Yeah,
So
it's
I think the antecedent of the pronoun he is Professor Picorni, correct?
No, is that not James Joyce himself?
Yeah, I think
Oh,
it's
hold on.
makes an interesting point. Okay.
No trace of hell amid cheerful cup to moralize the idea of destiny.
Right.
Rather strange that he should have that fixed idea. Does he write anything for your movement?
Yeah, I think Professor Picorni has an opinion on a fixed on idée fixe, on on the psychology of having an obsession, not on I mean that's what I think that's the way I read why Professor Picorni is brought up. He makes an interesting point about obsessions.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's about belief.
Yes, I thought it was about eternal punishment.
Could be.
Eternal, he can never be a poet. Let's see. Well, speculated like to be, such persons always have. They drove, Buck Mulligan bends across the table gravely. They drove his wits astray, he said, by visions of hell. So he's talking about Dedalus, right? He will never capture the Attic note, the note of Swinburne of all poets, the white death and the ruddy birth. That's his tragedy. He can never be a poet, the joy of creation.
I think you're right. I think it's about it's Picorni's notion that there is no hell in Celtic and ancient Irish myth.
Yeah.
Huh.
Because he says that, eternal punishment, Haynes said, there was something on his mind. It's rather interesting because Professor Picorni makes an interesting point out of that. And then he continues, he can find no trace of hell in ancient Irish myth. The moral idea seems lacking. So he's saying it's interesting that Joyce or Dedalus is so fixated on hell and the punishments of hell, but it's because it's the Catholic tradition, not the ancient Irish tradition.
Right.
Just interesting going back to what we were talking about 10 years time. Sloat takes a different view on the 10 years. He says Joyce began writing Ulysses in 1914. I think that's your point, Bill, wasn't it, from the outset, that does not refer to Dubliners according to Sloat. He thinks it's reference to the starting to write Ulysses in 1914.
I disagree.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I mean, both things are true.
Both things are true. This is the man who intends to write a novel in 15 years. Yeah.
But if he did start to write it in 14, it was finished. It was serialized in 1920, beginning, and then published in 22. That's only 8 years. It's not 10 years.
Yeah. He's saying, and this is in quotes, when Gogarty introduced Joyce to Trench, the model for Haynes, he announced, and this is in quotes, "This is the man who intends to write a novel in 15 years. That's sourced to Elbad. So the plot thickens. That's
Yeah, but I think to me that's why it's intentional on Joyce's part to make it 1914.
Yeah.
Because otherwise he could have just said 15 years if it was just a meaningless number or the actual number that Mulligan or Gogarty had mentioned. But he doesn't. He makes it 10 years, which brings us to 1914.
Yeah.
Huh.
Interesting. So and just as I have the page open, this is, I'm sorry, I'm rambling here a bit, but the Freeman's Journal for 16th of June reports the arrival on the 15th of June of Rosevan from Bridgewater with bricks. You know, the arrivals of ships. It's a real ship.
Yeah.
So here I'm really getting in the weeds here. Forgive me. But if we look at Haynes, Haynes opened his new bought book, and he says, "I'm sorry. Shakespeare is a happy hunting ground of all minds that have lost their balance."
Yeah.
Then we go to the one-legged sailor.
Oh, nice. Very
Crowd
nice.
at the area of 14 Nelson Street. So we got the one-armed
one-handled adulterer.
One-handled adulterer. All right, so we got one leg, we got no balance, one leg missing, one hand missing, and then Buck Mulligan says, "You should see him," he said, "when his body loses balance. Wandering Angus, I call him." This is referring to Dedalus.
Yeah.
So,
Excellent.
and then just for fun, it's followed with, "I'm sure he has an idée fixe," which of course is, too much balance, too stuck.
Yeah, not flexible enough. Yeah. Nelson.
So we kind of teeter. We got teeter, fix.
Nice.
And I hate to tell you, but Nelson Street leads into Eccles Street.
Yeah, right. It does. Yeah.
So we're in the weeds.
And it's interesting that Stephen / Joyce, they are both sort of stuck. They're at this point, they're stuck. He hasn't decided he's leaving Dublin yet. He's thinking about it. But he is sort of fixed in place and he's stuck in Dublin right now.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Wow.
That was good.
Excellent.
This is mind-blowing stuff, isn't it?
Isn't it?
That it requires the effort that you make to read a poem, doesn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I'm not a criticism. I'm just saying that's
Mm-hmm.
one giant poem. I regard this as. Right.
Well, that makes me think of something I've thought about for a while, and that there's so many references to people here who are either there's the one-legged or the one-armed, or there's the deaf mute, or someone is blind. And it makes me think that Bloom is the whole person who has he has defects, but he's whole.
Yeah.
Except for his for his
Yes.
sexual organ.
Yes. Right.
And I think this is reality. I mean, it was probably a bit more common for all these sorts of things at that time because of the level of medicine, et cetera. But I mean, even in our own time, I think one of the signs of maturity is when we begin to realize that how many people are either stricken themselves or have family members who are stricken. And you know that these are not exceptions; these are commonplaces.
I think that's one of the things that makes this a modern novel too. It's not what a writer would choose to write about unless it was germane to the story. You know, if somebody had a particular defect that mattered. I'm thinking maybe Thomas Hardy characters or something, but in this case, this is just life. This is city life. And you see people with all kinds of conditions, like Tisdall Farrell, for one. He's batty as hell, and he's walking the streets outside of lampposts whenever he comes. You know, so he's off his nut, and then you've got, as Jane said, blind and mute and one-legged and one-handled, and yeah. Life observed.
Life observed carefully.
Yeah.
Not trying to paint a pretty
And
picture all the time.
Gertie McDowell.
Yes, right.
And as I said, we have, you know, this is the thing with Stephen Dedalus, you know, his body, you should see him when his body loses its balance. And the reports that I've been reading is that Joyce had a peculiar type of gait when he walked, and that his dance was you know, was peculiar. It was kind of stiff-legged. So,
And he also had a lot of eyesight issues.
a lot of eyesight issues, to say the least.
Right. So depth perception perhaps was a factor in terms of his balance, but it was more drink than anything else that Mulligan's referring to. When the girls have to step over him in the doorway.
Yeah.
It's what they call nowadays being a little bit to the Kildare side.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
I have to go.
Yeah, I just looked and I saw that it's 3 minutes before the hour. So
Are you? Let me ask you too. Are you recording the Shakespeare discussion?
Yes. Yeah.
And
You want me to, do you know how to find all that stuff?
No. If you're going to email me that, because I won't be able to make it tomorrow. I'll be on an airplane to New York.
Oh, okay. Yes, I do record it. And if you will remind me, if people cannot find all of this stuff and they want you know, go to the direct thing of all the live recordings, remind me, and the next time we meet, and I'll put it in the chat so you can find it easily.
Right.
Yep. Okay, well, Bill, have a wonderful time in New York.
Thank you.
Duncan, can you stay on for about 30 seconds after everybody goes? I just want to ask you a couple questions about upcoming sessions, okay?
Okay, so that means that everybody else has to let themselves out instead of me doing it.
Okay.
Anyway, night, everybody.
No, thanks. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
I just want to know, the Hamlet session still goes tomorrow, correct?
Yes.
You were kind enough to send me word about a session tonight out of Venice, California, I think.
Yes.
Okay, I actually can do that because the guy who runs the Bloomsday Montreal sessions is an accountant, and I don't know what your tax season is like in the States, but this
yeah. I know. My ex-wife is a bookkeeper.
fair enough. And so we just canceled our April sessions. We just told them, don't do this. Do your taxes.
Yeah, right.
Come tonight. Are you starting at 7:00 Texas time?
7:00 Texas time.
Okay, that's 6:00 my time. Final question. What are you doing on Monday's session? Are you still working on Stanislav, his brother's book?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We're going to, we had a session We
Okay.
did read the preface and we read the introductory, but we agreed at the beginning that we would be rereading it this next Monday.
I will probably not participate in those.
Okay.
And do you foresee that going for about a month or so?
Yeah, I guess I'm not, since we have not actually started the book yet, I don't know how many pages we will get through.
Okay, sounds
Once
good.
we
I'll just
get
keep
to,
asking you. I'll just keep asking you then. Okay, what are you doing Monday? And just throwing this out there. At some point on Monday, somebody else suggested this, but it might be nice to look at Thornton Wilder's Our Town, something from our side of the Atlantic, and it's a nice little
Uh-huh.
play. So
Okay,
something.
we'll make that recommendation in the group meeting.
Okay, all right. I won't be
Yeah.
attending Monday's session, but it's the same
Okay,
cast of
but
characters.
we're not going to have another discussion about what's next
Sure,
until
sure.
until we get probably at least halfway through My
Fair enough.
Brother's Keeper.
Okay, sounds good.
And there has been some discussion of moving one of the Shakespeare plays till
I agree.
Monday.
Yep, that's
So,
good.
but it's all open in the air.
Okay, sounds good. All right.
And Our Town, I was Wally in Our Town when I was probably 9 years old. Sitting in the graveyard talking.
It's a neat play.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. I'll let you go, and all things working out. I'll see you tonight then.
Very good.